Hey, I've been thinking about this week the riots and the protests, which I'm sure we've all been thinking about that a lot. And it occurs to me that this is not the first time this has happened in Richmond. In April 2nd through April 5th of 1865, the Confederacy fell and Richmond burned. Basically, President Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy got a message while he was in church that morning downtown. He got a message from General Lee that he had lost in Petersburg. And so the government of the Confederacy got on trains and left the city that day. And the people that were left here in Richmond started to set fire to the place. At first it was, let's burn a few things so that when the Union soldiers come in, they don't get them. But they set fire and the fire spread and about 800 buildings downtown burned during the course of those several days. It was a really weird and wild time. People got into the alcohol stores that were there and they started smashing all the alcohol so the Union soldiers wouldn't get it. And then a lot of the people who had been hungry and almost starving for several months leading up to that day, a lot of the people went out and started drinking alcohol from the streets and getting very drunk, and then fires came, and it was a lot of protest and anger and frustration after several months of pent-up hardship. And I thought about that, and I thought, man, there's a lot of similarities to Richmond and burning in places over the last week or so. We've just come out of several months of a weird situation, a hard situation. Yes, we have Netflix and other things, so it's a little different than what they had. But we came out of several months of a hard situation, and then there was this like flashpoint incident that really drove people to kind of come out and riot, and then things burned. But I think another similarity between those two situations is that both situations had something to do with race. The Civil War, for all that historians want to argue about states' rights and all those kind of issues, also had a lot to do with race. And you had things like the Three-Fifths Compromise, where black people as slaves were considered 3/5 of a person for the purpose of doing a census and counting, delegates in Congress and all that. So you had that kind of stuff in the background of the Civil War. And today, it occurs to me that we have come a long way since 1865, that we do not treat black lives as if they are 3/5 of a person. But I think the recent protests have shown we have a ways to go, and that we can do better, and that it's not perfect, and that the tension that we experienced then 170 plus years ago, we're still seeing some of that today, and that some of those issues are left unresolved. And I think as a society we have grown, but we have a lot of work to do. And so as I see it as a pastor, as one man's opinion, as a pastor in the community, I see the work as a two-part thing. One is there are systemic injustices that need to be dealt with. I heard a podcast a couple of years ago, and it was talking about the justice system in Cleveland, Ohio. And they made this one comment in the podcast. They said, in the justice system, if you go into court or whatever, it never hurts to be white and it never helps to be black. And I heard that and I just thought, man, if that is true, it's a problem. There's something not right about that, and it needs to be addressed. And so I think there are meaningful reforms that can happen in policing and just the justice system in general. And I am not a person in power in those systems able to change them. But my hope and prayer is that the protests over the past week are shining a light on that and will actually motivate action to start fixing the system so that some of these things we have seen don't continue. But the other issue I see at play here, and this is one that I have maybe more of a stake as a pastor. The other issue I see is that a lot of this just comes from sin in the human heart, that we are broken people and we continue to act out in some really bad ways. And I think the brokenness of the human heart is actually something that laws can't touch. Laws can modify behavior for a while, but laws cannot change the human heart. That's what Jesus does. And the people of faith have a responsibility to speak up to that issue as well. We are the people who believe that Genesis 1, going all the way back to the roots of our faith, that when God created the earth and he creates the animals and all of the things on the earth, he creates people. And in Genesis 1:26 it says this, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. We believe that, and what that means is that all of us carry this image of God in us, the Imago Dei, this stamp of God's Spirit is in all of us, regardless of background or regardless of tribe or nation or ethnic group or language. We all have the image of God in us. And just that idea has actually been revolutionary in the history of the world. Some people have believed historically that certain people are better than other people, and then the Judeo-Christian ethic comes along and says, no, that's not true. Actually, we are created beings, and you need to see the image of God in every person. Theoretically, that mindset and that background is built into our country. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, one of the most famous lines that you probably, maybe the only thing you remember from government class as a kid, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." That's Christian talk. That is Judeo-Christian on some level. That is religious language, because in the Declaration it says Creator with a capital C. It's talking about, it doesn't say God specifically or Jesus, but that's what it's talking about. And it's saying, hey, as created beings, as creatures, we have the Spirit of God in us. And as such, and we think this is self-evident, we think everybody should just be aware of this. This should be very blatantly obvious to all of us, that because we are created by a Creator and we have His Spirit inside of us, we have rights. There's a dignity to us. We are something different than the animals. So that's built into our culture, but I think we still have a long way to go to realize it and to walk it out. So my prayer now, as I'm praying and thinking through and journaling, and my prayer the last couple of days is, Lord, how would you have me use my voice? Where do I speak? Where should I be quiet? What should I say? But my prayer is for systemic injustice, that the system would be reformed from the cries of protesters. And my prayer also is for my own heart, that I would look at my own biases, my own ways that I've been prejudiced, and think about ways that I might treat people not as equals and do the work there. Maya Angelou famously said, and it's been quoted and misquoted by lots of people, she was talking about her own life, and she said, "I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." And sometimes that is quoted as a way to beat people over the head, like you should know better and do better. She didn't mean it that. She was talking about herself. And so I think if we apply that to ourselves and go, okay, whatever I've done up to this point, I did then what I knew, but I have an opportunity to know better and do better. And that's not something you hit other people with. That's something you just say internally, I need to know better and do better. So my hope and prayer is the system is reformed and that people address the sin in their own hearts and look at ways that we all fall short. Because race is just one part of that right now, and it's a loud one in our culture, but there's a lot behind that for all of us. So that's my thought on Richmond burning this week and how we've been here before, and I'm praying that things will move forward better. For all of you who are Area 10 folks, I just wanted to let you know the elders are meeting tonight, the staff's been meeting, talking about ways forward. What does phase 2 look like as a state? Richmond is delaying phase 2 by at least a week, but we're looking at, hey, when can we resume classes, Bible studies, things where we gather in person, maybe here at the facilities or in people's homes. We're looking at that over the next couple of weeks. We're looking at ways that we could all gather together, maybe outside for a special gathering before we are able to get back into the Bird. So we have some good things planned. We're just kind of watching that closely, so stay tuned, and thanks for being with us.